This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV.
Thankful Thursday isn't about pretending things turned out okay. It's about noticing what stayed standing when they didn't. And today, we're sitting with the kind of gratitude that doesn't arrive after healing, but has to exist alongside loss, uncertainty, and change. When someone like Céline Dion continues to show up with grace while carrying what hasn't lifted, it invites a quieter, harder question about what it actually means to be thankful when life doesn't give you your old footing back.
It's Thankful Thursday, a pause in the chaos to notice what still holds up, keeps us going, or surprised us this week in the best way. Gratitude lives here. It's
Boss be rising, BBTV's igniting, turn the volume up. Yeah, the whole world's invited from the gravel road to the neon dream. She built an empire out of broken wings. Boss be rising, sky ain't even the ceiling when she hits go live. Everybody feels it.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Thankful Thursday. It's a strange space to stand in when gratitude doesn't come wrapped in relief, because most of what we're taught about thankfulness, it assumes something has already resolved, healed, or even been restored. And that isn't always how life works. There are seasons where loss doesn't move out of the way for gratitude, where uncertainty doesn't pause so you can catch your breath, and definitely where the version of yourself you used to rely on is no longer available to you. Yet life continues anyway. That's the kind of gratitude I want to sit with today. Not the performative kind that, rushes to find silver linings, but the quieter kind that exists in real time while things are still, unfinished. When you look at someone like Céline Dion, what stands out isn't just her talent or her legacy. It's the way she continues to carry herself in the middle of profound personal change and loss and physical uncertainty without pretending that, those things don't exist. So her story right now isn't about triumph or comeback. It's about presence, about staying connected to gratitude without denying grief, and about learning how to live when the body, the future, and the sense of self you once trusted are no longer predictable. That's an uncomfortable place to be because it forces you to redefine what strength actually looks like. And it challenges the idea that thankfulness has to be loud or optimistic or even tied to outcomes. There is definitely a kind of endurance that doesn't get celebrated very often. The endurance of continuing to show up honestly, even when you don't know how the story is going to unfold. That endurance, it asks for a different relationship with gratitude, one that isn't dependent on resolution. Many people only feel allowed to be thankful once the worst part is over, once the pain has been justified by a lesson or a reward or a happy ending of some sort. But real life doesn't always provide those clean transitions. We all know that. Sometimes gratitude has to live alongside fear, alongside disappointment, and definitely alongside the grief of losing not just people, but versions of yourself you never expected to outgrow. What makes this hard to talk about is that we live in a culture that prefers recovery narratives, stories where suffering is only acceptable if it leads somewhere inspiring. But that leaves very little room for people who are, still in the middle, still adapting, still learning how to inhabit a life that no longer looks the way they imagined, right? Celine's story right now, it doesn't fit neatly into a redemption arc. And that's precisely why it matters, because it reflects something deeply human about the way gratitude actually functions when you're not done grieving. Gratitude in these moments isn't about being happy with what happened. It's about acknowledging what remains, what still and connects you to meaning, purpose, or love, even as other things fall away. There is humility in that kind of gratitude because it requires letting go of control and certainty. And it asks you to accept that thankfulness doesn't have to cancel out sadness in order to be real. Many people struggle here, not because they're ungrateful, but because they've been taught that gratitude shouldn't make things feel better, or it should. And when it doesn't, then assume they're doing it wrong. But gratitude that coexists with loss isn't meant to soothe you. Not at all. It's meant to anchor you, to remind you that even in change, even in limitation, there is still something worth holding on to. Watching someone live publicly through that process can be confronting because it strips away the illusion that success, talent, or even love insulates you from suffering. And it forces you to reckon with the reality that no one is exempt from. From having to renegotiate their life when circumstances change. What's striking about Celine isn't that she expresses gratitude despite loss. It's that she expresses it without pretending the loss isn't costly, without minimizing what's been taken from her, and without rushing to present a version of strength that feels palatable to others. That kind of honesty invites us to rethink our own relationships with thankfulness, to question whether we've been using gratitude as a way to bypass pain instead of a way to stay grounded within. Thankful Thursday exists for that reconsideration, for the slow work of redefining what it means to be thankful when life doesn't return what it took, when healing isn't linear, and definitely when the future remains uncertain. This isn't about celebrating endurance or virtue, or as a virtue, or suffering as character building. It's about recognizing the quiet courage it takes to remain present without guarantees, to keep showing up to your life as it is rather than as you wish it were. Gratitude in this sense becomes less about appreciation, more about acknowledgement. And we're talking about acknowledging the love that still exists, the connections that remain, the purpose that hasn't disappeared, even if its expression has changed. There's also a tenderness required here, because living this way, it means allowing yourself to grieve honestly without treating gratitude as a betrayal of that grief. Too often, people feel pressured to choose one or the other, as if being thankful invalidates sorrow or sorrow invalidates thankfulness, when in reality, the two often grow side by side. So Celine's current chapter reminds us, grace doesn't mean ease, and dignity, it doesn't mean denial. It means learning how to carry what you've been given and what you've lost at the same time. Hi, Patty friend. How are you, honey? Good to see you again. So that's really, not something that you master quickly. And it's not something that looks impressive from the outside. But it is something many people quietly recognize in their own lives, especially during seasons where nothing feels resolved. So, Thankful Thursday is an invitation to slow down enough to notice that kind of gratitude. The kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind that I guess it doesn't require applause, and the kind that simply says, I'm still here, even if everything I relied on before has changed. Today isn't about answers or inspiration. It's about sitting with the reality that gratitude doesn't always feel good, but it can still be meaningful. And sometimes meaning is what keeps us steady when comfort is no longer available. I think we can all probably agree on that. So before we move into this letter, because you know I have one, I want to slow the room down just enough to remember what Ask a Bee is actually here to do, because this isn't a place where stories are offered. Hi, Dennis. It's not a place where stories are offered up for solutions where gratitude gets turned into something performative. Letters on this show exist because there are experiences that don't resolve neatly. And you know what? Experiences where people are learning how to live alongside change rather than move past it. And Thankful Thursday often brings those tensions into a sharper focus. The people who wrote this, or the person that wrote this, isn't looking for reassurance or a lesson. And they aren't asking to be reminded of what they should be thankful for. They're naming the quiet confusion of trying to hold gratitude at the same time as grief or loss or limitation without feeling dishonest or afraid that one cancels out the other. Hi, Dennis. Everybody's friends here. Thank you for asking. So this is the kind of place where gratitude feels complicated, right? Not because it's absent, but because it no longer looks the way it used to. That can be unsettling when you're used to thinking of thankfulness as something that arrives after relief. So what Askaby offers here isn't clarity or direction, it's room. Room to speak about what it feels like to stay present in a life that has shifted, to acknowledge what's been. Bye-bye, Dennis. Thanks for coming. What's been lost without erasing what still remains, and to sit with the discomfort of not knowing how to reconcile those things yet, you know? As you listen to this letter, please notice how much of it lives in that in-between space where appreciation and sorrow exist side by side, and where the hardest part isn't the loss itself, but learning how to inhabit a version of gratitude that doesn't require pretending you're okay. This letter isn't meant to lead us anywhere specific, okay? It's meant to be heard as it is, because sometimes the most respectful response to a story like this is to allow it to unfold without interruption or judgment or the pressure to make it meaningful before it's time. Here's your letter.
I'm writing because I don't know how to explain what gratitude looks like in my life anymore, and I feel like I'm failing at it somehow. I've lost things I never imagined I would lose, not all at once, but slowly, through changes in my body, my relationships, and the future I thought I was building toward, and even though I know I still have things to be thankful for, the gratitude doesn't feel the way it used to. It feels quieter now, heavier, more complicated, and sometimes I wonder if that means I'm doing it wrong. People around me seem uncomfortable when I talk about both loss and thankfulness in the same breath, like I'm supposed to pick one, either be grateful or be grieving, but that doesn't match my reality. There are days when I'm deeply thankful just to wake up, to still be here, to still love and be loved, and there are other days when that same thankfulness sits right next to sadness for what I can't do anymore or what I don't recognize in myself. I feel guilty admitting that, like gratitude should erase the grief instead of living alongside it. I don't want to be ungrateful, and I don't want to pretend I'm okay when I'm not, and I don't know how to hold both without feeling like I'm letting someone down, including myself. I'm trying to learn how to be thankful without denying what hurts, but I don't see many examples of that kind of gratitude, and sometimes I feel very alone in it. I guess what I'm asking is whether gratitude is still real if it doesn't feel light anymore, and whether it's okay to be thankful for what remains while still mourning what's been taken. Signed, learning how to be grateful in a life that no longer looks the way I imagined.
Okay. So, what you're just, I want to answer this, and sometimes it's hard for me to get into the answer right away because I just want to say, I hear you, I see you, and nothing that I can say is ever going to sound any more important than those two things, as far as I'm concerned. It's hard to write in a letter, and know that it's going to be, not know if it's going to be anonymous or not. Okay. I don't tell anybody, plain and simple. But I do tell the person that I am reading their letter today. And if by chance you are out there, I want to say that first. I hear you, I see you, and you're validated. Okay. So, what you're describing, again, I'm not a professional. This is all just my opinion. But what you're describing to me isn't a failure of gratitude. It's a transformation of it. And that distinction matters more than most people realize, because gratitude isn't a fixed emotion or a moral achievement. It's a relationship that changes shape as life changes shape, right? When loss enters slowly through the body, through altered capacity, through futures that quietly close rather than collapse at all at once, right? Gratitude doesn't disappear, it deepens. And depth often feels heavier than brightness. The reason it feels confusing is because we're taught to associate thankfulness with relief, resolution, or positivity, as if gratitude only counts when it lifts us out of pain instead of anchoring us inside of it. But the gratitude that you're describing isn't shallow or absent, it's mature. And maturity almost never feels light. It feels complex and layered and sometimes lonely, especially when the people around you are more comfortable with tidy emotions than with honesty. So, holding gratitude and grief at the same time doesn't mean that you're either one incorrectly, okay? It means you're telling the truth about your life as it is now, not as it used to be or as others wish it were. What makes this particularly hard is that gratitude is often used socially as a way to close conversations, to reassure others that everything is okay or that suffering has been redeemed somehow. No. And when your gratitude refuses to perform that function, it can make people uneasy. That unease doesn't come from your failure to be thankful. It comes from their discomfort with complexity, with the reality that, hey, some losses don't resolve into lessons, and some changes, they really don't come with compensation. When you talk about feeling guilty for letting gratitude coexist with sadness, what I hear is someone who has internalized that, the idea that gratitude should erase grief rather than accompany it. And that idea is both unrealistic and unfair. Grief doesn't invalidate thankfulness, okay? And thankfulness doesn't betray grief. They are not opposites. They're not competing for space. They are parallel responses to loving something that mattered and still matters. The version of gratitude that you're learning now is quieter because it's no longer fueled by expectation. It's no longer tied to how things are supposed to turn out. And that can feel unsettling, especially when you've spent a lifetime associating gratitude with reward. Programming, as technical as it sounds, it's just not. So, oh gosh, this kind of gratitude, it doesn't promise comfort. It offers steadiness, a way of remaining present when certainty is gone. And that steadiness can feel fragile because it isn't reinforced by applause or reassurance. When you look at someone like Celine Dion in this chapter of her life, what stands out isn't resilience as performance, it's presence, the choice to acknowledge what has been lost without pretending it hasn't cost her dearly, and the choice to express thankfulness, not for outcomes, but for connection, meaning, and the ability to remain herself even as the conditions of her life change. I mean, come on. You have to admit, just in the last 10 years, her life has been just completely turned upside down. That's why I think she's a good example for this letter today. And I hope it helps because this woman is a beautiful soul. And I think, well, I think we can relate. Because, that kind of gratitude doesn't announce itself loudly because it doesn't need to convince anyone. It simply exists as a way of staying oriented when the ground shifts. You're not alone in feeling unsure how to live inside that space because, you know what? We don't offer many models for it. And when we do, they're often flattened into inspiration rather than allowed to remain complicated. Pardon me. The loneliness that you feel isn't a sign that you're ungrateful. It's a sign that you're inhabiting a form of gratitude that isn't widely understood or celebrated. There is also something important in the way you describe feeling, like you're letting someone down. Because that pressure reveals how often gratitude gets turned into an obligation rather than a genuine response. And obligations always carry guilt when they're not performed correctly, right? But gratitude, that is honest. It cannot be obligated. It has to be allowed to change as you change. Or it becomes another way of silencing yourself. The questions of whether gratitude is still real when it doesn't feel light is a powerful one because it exposes how shallow our cultural definition of thankfulness has become. Programming. Real gratitude isn't always pleasant and it isn't always comforting. Sometimes it's simply the recognition that something meaningful still exists even as the other things fall away. That recognition can hurt because it keeps you connected to what you've lost instead of numbing you to it. But it can also keep you grounded in what remains without demanding that you minimize your pain. You're not wrong. Not wrong at all for missing the version of yourself who found gratitude easier. Just as you're not wrong for learning how to be thankful in a way that feels slower and more deliberate now. This transition, it doesn't mean you've lost gratitude. It means you're carrying it with more awareness. And awareness often feels heavier before it feels sustaining. It's also worth naming that, gratitude isn't meant to resolve anything. It isn't a tool for fixing grief or making sense of loss. It's simply a way of staying in a relationship with your life, even when that life no longer matches your expectations. When gratitude becomes quieter, it often becomes more personal, less performative, and less available for public consumption. And that can be, I don't know, it can feel isolating if you're used to sharing it as something others recognize as affirmed. But private gratitude, whole other story. The kind that doesn't need witnesses, okay, is often the most durable, believe it or not. Because it isn't dependent on approval or understanding. You're allowed to be thankful for what remains without being okay with what was taken, and you're allowed to grieve what's gone without erasing the meaning that still exists. Those permissions don't come from anyone else. They come from your willingness to tell the truth about your experience instead of forcing it into a shape that feels acceptable. Learning how to live with this kind of gratitude, it takes time because everything takes time, right? But also because it requires releasing the idea that thankfulness should make you feel better and embracing the idea that sometimes it simply helps you stay present, connected, honest. That may not look impressive and it may not feel uplifting, but it is real. And real gratitude doesn't need to prove itself ever. It only needs room to exist as is, alongside the grief, the change, and the uncertainty, without being asked to justify its weight. I know it doesn't seem so easy when you say it, right? I mean, nothing is ever easy when you're just talking about it. It's hard. Life is hard. Life sucks sometimes. Then again, life is pretty great. It can be both, right? It can always be both.
I'm writing because I don't know how to explain what gratitude looks like in my
Excuse me, I'm not good today either. It's my brain going nuts today. We're going to get into this story just a little bit here because I think Miss Céline Dion is inspirational. And if you know more about her life, you can understand that, her story is going to resonate everywhere, even after she's gone, because of the fight that she's had, well, at least for the last 10 years. I can't imagine what losing so much, especially with her own self. But I think what makes Celine's story really resonate so strongly is the season of her life isn't the scale of her success or the longevity of her career. It's the way loss has arrived, not as a single dramatic rupture, but as an ongoing redefinition of what her life is allowed to look like, sound like, feel like, and how she continues to inhabit that reality without pretending it hasn't changed her. I think that's a problem for all of us. Things like what she's gone through, it changes us. And we don't stop and realize that before we've already ruined ourselves in some situations. I know I do that. Sometimes it just kind of sneaks up on you too, and everybody has those moments, don't they? So the way I see it is there is something pretty profoundly destabilizing about, I don't know, losing capacity rather than opportunity, about waking up in a body that no longer behaves the way it used to and realizing that effort and discipline and desire and they can no longer guarantee the same outcomes because that kind of loss forces you to renegotiate your identity at its core. So Celine's voice has always been treated as both her gift and her anchor, something that defined her presence in the world and gave structure to her sense of purpose. And the reliability of that voice becomes uncertain, and the loss extends far beyond performance. It reaches into selfhood. What's striking is not that she grieves this openly, but that she doesn't rush to reframe it into something inspirational or palatable, something that reassures others. She's still okay. Instead, she allows the reality of her situation to remain unfinished. And that unfinishedness is deeply uncomfortable for an audience accustomed to comeback narratives and redemption arcs. We tend to celebrate resilience when it looks like restoration. when someone returns to what they were before. But Celine's story right now asks a harder question about what resilience looks like when restoration isn't guaranteed and gratitude has to exist without the promise of return. There is a quiet courage in continuing to show up to your life when the rules you relied on no longer apply, when the future you imagined is no longer available, and definitely when the thing you were most known for can no longer be used as proof of your worth or direction. That kind of courage doesn't announce itself loudly because it isn't trying to convince anyone. It's simply the act of staying present without knowing how the story resolves. Many people struggle here, not because they lack gratitude, but because gratitude in these moments feels differently and different than they expected, for sure. Heavier, more deliberate, and less tied to outcome. Celine's way of holding gratitude now doesn't erase grief. It makes room for it. And that coexistence challenges the cultural assumption that thankfulness should feel uplifting or reassuring. Watching someone publicly navigate that tension can be unsettling because it removes the illusion that talent and discipline or love can insulate you from having to grieve parts of yourself you never expected to lose. There is also something deeply human in the way that she continues to express appreciation for connection, for music, for the people who remain present in her life, without suggesting that those things compensate for what has been taken. Gratitude here isn't a replacement, it's an orientation, a way of staying connected to meaning, even as capacity changes. That distinction matters because it reframes gratitude from being a response to improvement into being a practice of presence. And definitely, presence often feels fragile when you're learning how to live inside new limits. So, Celine's story exposes how often we equate thankfulness with resolution and how little language we have for gratitude that exists mid process, mid loss, mid uncertainty. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with this because people want reassurance. They want to know how the story ends, and they want evidence that suffering leads somewhere satisfying. When that evidence isn't available, discomfort sets in. Rather than sit with that discomfort, many people look away or try to reframe the story into something more digestible, I guess. Celine's refusal to rush that reframing keeps the conversation honest. She isn't offering a moral or a lesson. She's offering presence. And presence is harder to consume than inspiration because it asks something of the observer: patience, humility, willingness to accept that not all losses come with compensation. So, this first segment isn't about cataloging what she lost or predicting what comes next. It's about noticing how gratitude shifts when life asks you to let go of certainty, when the future becomes something you approach carefully rather than confidently. There's wisdom in that shift, even though it doesn't feel triumphant because it teaches you how to stay oriented without guarantees, how to remain connected to what still matters without minimizing what hurts. And you know what? How to honor a life that continues to have meaning even as its shape changes. Celine's current chapter invites us to reconsider the way we talk about thankfulness, not as something that fixes pain, but as something that allows us to remain present inside it without being consumed. That kind of gratitude, it doesn't make for easy stories, but it makes for honest ones. And honesty, especially in seasons of loss, is often the most generous thing a person can offer, both to themselves and to others who are quietly learning how to do the same. All right. We're going to take a little break because I hear my dog doing his Catahoula pee pee dance. That's what I'm going to start calling it. Y'all go ahead and listen to this really cool song, and I shall be back shortly.
She came from the quiet storms, built a fire from the ground, turned a whisper to a warning. Now her voice shakes the town. Every setback was a lesson, every doubt became a key, unlocking something bigger. That's the rise of Boss B. When the lights go low, her vision hits high. She built a whole damn network off a promise and a try. Every sunrise, every moment, she's stacking legacy. This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel road to the neon dream, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's the queen of the comeback, the storm in the stream, crafting stories out of heartbeats, making visions out of dreams. Got thunder in the hustle, got a voice that cuts clean. Every mic she touches turns the power unseen. So let brother spin the numbers, let the views rise slow or fast. Boss B doesn't measure wins by echoes of the past. This moment is a pivot, this season's history. Bow down to the founder of the BBTV dynasty. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Yeah, the whole world's united. From the gravel roads to the neon. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. Truth in the frame, got a heart that won't retire, and a gift you can't name. Every loop, every letter, every dream she sets free. It's a love note to the world sign. Boss B. And the world keeps watching as the numbers climb, but she's counting all the moments, not the dollar signs. From the late night grind to the daylight scene, she's building something bigger than the algorithm's dream. Boss B rising, BBTV shining. Her story's rewriting, a legacy in real time. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. BBTV, where the stories breathe. BBTV, where the dreamers believe. Boss B rising, watch her take her place. This is BBTV, this is her grace.
Join Boss B for Ask a Bee Monday through Friday, 12 noon Central Standard Time and Jukebox Journey every Saturday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
All righty, we are back. And it never goes the way I want it to. I don't know why. So, what do you think about that song, though, y'all? Come on. And did you see the Iron Sharpening Universe? That is Big Jack all the way. Isn't that cool? Y'all get over there and watch some of that stuff. I'm telling you, we are doing major things this year, and it's all going upwards, and we're ready to take you with us. Definitely get over there for Grow and Glow Academy. We had our first, well, we started on Tuesday night. We replayed it on Wednesday night, and we will see you again next Wednesday night because, hey, we're doing this on the 2nd and the 3rd of every month because you guys need to learn, right? And we are tired of hearing people tell you the exact opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. If you weren't there for the other show, let me tell you what we're doing, okay? First off, 2nd and 3rd Wednesdays. You got that part. But we are building from the ground up one channel to show you how to do it. And at the end of the year, 24 episodes. So get there because you got to be there, okay? We're not just going to give it away to somebody random. You got to show up, okay? But we are going to give it to you. And if we get it monetized, well, guess what? You get monetized. And you get to run with it. It's yours. We hand it over to you clean, free, nothing, no ties. But we do ask that you stick with the galaxy or the universe because we need more galaxies in this place, right? All right. Y'all go see Big Jack. Y'all go see Mama Lions. Y'all get back here and see me. That's all there is to it. All right. So the second segment, the next movement asks us to sit with is how gratitude matures when it's no longer tethered to certainty. Sorry, y'all. I'm all hyped up now. Got my caffeine and definitely got my excitement going with Grow and Glow Academy. I'm telling you. This is fun stuff. We had a blast. And we usually go about an hour, but we went 2 on that first show. That's how much fun we were having. Y'all get over there. Okay, so everybody with me? Woosah, if that's what you want to say. I don't know. So once you accept some things may not return, thankfulness, it stops being a reaction to, improvement and becomes a way of orienting yourself in the present, right? So Celine's life right now isn't organized around what she might regain because there's loss here, not gain. We know this. This illness is not anything that's going to be good, and it's not going to end well. And she knows that too. We're talking about her strength through this. This is organized around what she can still honor, still connect to, still recognize as meaningful, even as the future remains unclear. And that distinction, it really reshapes how gratitude functions. There is a profound humility and acknowledging that you don't know what comes next and choosing to stay anyway, choosing to remain engaged with your life rather than postponing gratitude until conditions improve. This kind of thankfulness doesn't rely on optimism. It relies on honesty. And honesty often feels heavier. It really does because it refuses to bypass fear, disappointment, grief, just in order to sound reassuring. What many people don't talk about is how destabilizing it can be to live without the familiar markers that once told you who you were doing or what you were doing well, especially when your identity has been built around a particular capacity or role or contribution. Her singing, her music. I mean, that's what it was built around, right? When that marker becomes unreliable because she's having a harder time singing now, right? You're forced to ask deeper questions about worth and purpose and definitely presence. And those questions rarely produce quick comfort. Celine's willingness to remain visible in this space without turning her experience into motivational art offers a rare example of gratitude that doesn't perform for approval. Gratitude that exists without needing to convince anyone it's enough. And that kind of visibility can be confronting, and because it mirrors the places in our own lives where we've learned to delay gratitude until things are fixed or healed or explained. Many people believe they're being honest when they say they'll be thankful once circumstances change, but what they're often doing is protecting themselves from a vulnerability of acknowledging what still matters while also admitting what hurts. Gratitude in the middle requires a different kind of courage. The courage that to stay connected to meaning without guarantees. And that courage is quieter than resilience narratives usually allow. There's also a tenderness in recognizing that gratitude doesn't always feel expansive. Sometimes it feels contained and precise, almost fragile, because it's being practiced carefully within limits that must be respected. Celine's current chapter, it shows how gratitude can become more intentional when it's no longer abundant, and how it shifts from a broad emotional state into a deliberate way of relating to what remains. That shift doesn't diminish gratitude. It defines it. It refines it, stripping away expectation and replacing it with presence. Watching this process unfold publicly challenges the assumption that gratitude must always feel good in order to be real. Because what's being modeled here is gratitude that steadies rather than soothes. That grounds rather than uplifts, doesn't it? There is a kind of peace that comes from releasing the need for gratitude to justify suffering, to prove that loss was worthwhile or necessary, and instead allowing it to simply coexist with what has been taken. This coexistence, it doesn't resolve the tension, but it makes it livable. And that livability is often what allows people to continue without losing themselves entirely. You know, the final thing in this segment invites us to consider how much permission we give ourselves to practice gratitude honestly, without editing out grief or fear to make it more acceptable. Celine's way of inhabiting this its season reminds us that thankfulness doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't even have to be hopeful or reassuring to be true. It can be quiet and deliberate and unresolved and still hold profound meaning. Ending here doesn't offer closure because closure isn't always available, but it does offer recognition, and recognition that gratitude can be a form of staying present rather than a declaration of being okay. We're not always all okay, are we? And that staying present, especially in the face of loss, is itself a meaningful act. I think we know that one too. And if we don't, well, I'm telling you now, it is very meaningful. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to end this here without trying to summarize or tie this into something neat. Because gratitude, like the kind we've talked about today, it doesn't resolve into conclusions. It settles into awareness. Thankful Thursday isn't about feeling better. It's about staying present with what still matters, even when things, I don't know, haven't lifted, changed, or been restored. And that kind of presence, it really deserves respect rather than explanation, I think. So if something today stayed with you, let it stay quietly. without forcing meaning onto it, okay? Or rushing yourself towards reassurance. Gratitude doesn't have to sound hopeful to be real. And it definitely doesn't have to cancel out grief in order to exist. Sometimes it's simply the act of remaining connected to your life as it is, not as it was or as you expected it to be. Okay? And that connection can be enough for now. So we'll pick this back up tomorrow. And I am going to leave you with a little tuber chat and BB as soon as I see this. Lots of good info today, B. Thanks. See you later. Much love. Much more love for you, Patty friend. I love you, sweetheart. You have a wonderful day. A beautiful day, as beautiful as you are. Okay, so I am going to leave you with a little tuber chat, and I still haven't fixed this. I am so sorry. I've had my granddaughter this week, and it's been crazy. Her mama has a new job with a new schedule, and we're all trying to adjust. So just a quick look at what's running in the background here and what's ahead. Let them roll, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Same time, same vibe, same love. Okay? Let me get you some tuber chat. Tuber.
Before we roll on, I want to take a second to shout out Tuber Chat, because once again they showed up and held space the way real community does. This channel isn't about noise or numbers chasing, it's about consistency, respect, and actually supporting creators without strings attached. That matters more than people realize. If you're looking for a place that lifts voices instead of talking over them, Tuber Chat is that lane. I appreciate the time, the encouragement, and the steady presence more than I can properly wrap into words. So much love to the Tuber Chat crew for doing what you do and doing it the right way.
Tuber!
If you're enjoying this show, subscribing is the easiest way to support what's being built here on BBTV. You'll see the join button right next to subscribe. No pressure, no expectations, just an option for people who want to support the channel in a real way. We're live weekdays at 12 p.m. Central, and each day has its own focus. Same honesty, same voice, just different conversations depending on the day. And if you've got a story you want to share, send it in. Anonymous is always fine.